It's a huge achievement coming to an Alpha weekend. I always think the hardest thing, well, the first hardest thing to do is to arrive on Alpha the very first night, walking down the drive, arriving in a kind of environment that you're not used to. And the second hardest thing, or equally hard thing, is arriving on an Alpha weekend. Because there's always that feeling of like, help, what is going to happen to me? I have a friend called Roger Stevenson who runs a church in Wandsworth. They have a congregation of about 150, 200 people. One morning, he had a special service. He had a guest speaker coming, and they were going to do some baptisms. And as he started the service, he looked up. And the way that the church is set out, it's kind of like this, with a congregation down here. But then on the first floor, there are offices. And so he looked up to the offices, and what he could see up there was a whole load of heavily armed police officers. I mean, they had like the helmets, the bulletproof jackets, the pistols, they had guns, they had, they just had the works. So he thought, what on earth is going on? So he got his colleague Paul, he said, just go and find out what's going on. So Paul came back, he said, look, we're in serious trouble. A man has been shot. And the whole area has been sealed off because the suspect is in the church. And they don't want to let the service continue. They can't just let the service continue. On the other hand, they don't want to just stop the service because they think the guy's going to take hostages. So he said the police have got a plan. And their plan is this. They're going to wander up and down the aisles inconspicuously. So my friend said, well, I don't think that's going to work. So he said, I think I've got a better idea. How about this? So this is what they did. He said, look, okay, guys, he said to the congregation, if you are a regular member of the congregation, because we got baptisms today, if you are a regular member of this church, I want you to come to the front right now. So they got up and came in. He said, if you are a friend of a regular member of the congregation, I'd like you to come to the front as well. So this worked brilliantly. Everybody came to the front, apart from one man. The police were very efficient. They moved in, they handcuffed him, they took him down to the police station, they raided his flat, they ransacked it. They got the wrong man. This man, it was his first time in church. He'd come because he heard that this was a place you could experience love, acceptance, healing. He had problems in his life. He was looking for reconciliation in his relationships, and he'd come in search of healing. And that's what he experienced. So I hope your experience of Alpha has not been like that, and I really hope your experience of the weekend won't be like that. It should be amazing, because what we're looking at this weekend is such an important subject. I just want to look at one verse with us this evening. It's in John chapter 15, verse 26, where Jesus says this, when the counselor comes, whom I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth, who goes out from the Father, he will testify about me. 3 very quick things about the Holy Spirit. First of all, who is the Holy Spirit? Well, he's a person. He will testify about me. Some people think the Holy Spirit is like an it, or like a force. No, the Holy Spirit is a person. Well, sometimes he's referred to as the Spirit of Jesus. He's the way in which Jesus is present within you. For example, if you prayed that prayer we looked at earlier in the course, where Jesus says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in. If you prayed that prayer saying, asking Jesus to come in, the Holy Spirit came to live within you. The Spirit of Jesus came to live within you. See, what Jesus says here is he will be sent by the Father, the Spirit of truth who goes out from the Father. He will testify about me. So the whole Trinity is involved in this, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. So the Holy Spirit is a person like Jesus, in fact, the Spirit of Jesus, who, like any person, thinks, acts, loves. the most wonderful person in the world, who comes to live within you. So the moment you say, come into my life, you will never be alone. Mother Teresa said the greatest problem in the world is not actually starvation, it's loneliness. It's kind of cosmic loneliness, of being in God's world without God. And the moment you experience the Holy Spirit living within you, you are never alone. That's the first thing. Second thing is, what is the Holy Spirit like? Jesus tells us here what he's like. He says, the counselor. It's a difficult word, the Greek word there, to translate. The literal Greek word is parakletos, which means para is alongside and kletos is called. So it's one who's called alongside. Sometimes it's translated the comforter. He's the encourager. He's the advocate, like an advocate in court who's on your side. The one called alongside of you. In the ancient world, if a little ship was in trouble, they'd send a big ship out to draw alongside the small ship and lead it into the safety of the harbor. The big ship was called a parakletos. And Jesus says the Holy Spirit's like that. He's the one who draws alongside you. I don't know what you're facing this weekend. All of us in life, we face difficulties of one sort or another. Troubles, anxieties, fears, disappointments, discouragements. Whatever it is that you are facing, you don't have to face those things alone. The Holy Spirit can draw alongside of you to be your comforter, your encourager, your friend. I remember one time when I was just going through a lot of anxiety in my life. A lot of things were happening. And I went to see this wise older guy. And I was probably only with him for about half an hour, but I poured out all my troubles. And I remember the feeling when I left the house. I felt totally different. The problems hadn't gone away. The anxieties were still there. But I felt different about them because I'd been with a wise counselor. Someone had drawn alongside me and given me a different perspective. And the problems in life, life in a sense is a kind of series of challenges, but you do not need to go through them alone. It's an amazing difference to go through life with the parakletos, with the comforter, with the advocate, alongside of you all of the way. That's what he's like. Third thing, what will he do? Jesus says, he will testify about me. Sometimes people say, I really don't get the Jesus bit. God, yes, I can understand God. Even the idea of some kind of spirit I can understand. But the Jesus bit, why Jesus? Well, when the Spirit comes to live within you, he will testify about Jesus. You'll get the Jesus bit. Because the Holy Spirit doesn't point to himself. He's kind of self-effacing. You say, well, I haven't heard much about the Holy Spirit. He'll be pleased about that. Because his role is to testify about Jesus, to point you to Jesus, to explain Jesus to you so that you understand about Jesus. So, my hope for this weekend is, first of all, you'll have a great time. The weather can only get better. So I hope you'll have lots of fun, walks on the beach, swimming, whatever. There's so much fun to be had on a weekend like this. I hope you'll get to know the small group. Again, this has been one of the most amazing features of these weekends, is the friendships. Wednesday evening's great, but you don't really have time. On a weekend, you have time to form the friendships, and that's a fantastic thing. But most of all, I hope that you will get to know Jesus better. Because Jesus says, when the counselor, the wise counselor, comes, whom I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth, who goes out from the Father, he will testify about me.